So for mine, I just finished my last flower row and my last stitch on the row, and I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 flowers in one row, and then I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 rows of the flowers, the full flower. There's 12 rows of the full flowers. So now after you finish your last row of a completed flower, this again is my 12th flower that I completed, and my last single crochet stitch, now I'm going to make a single crochet border all the way around the blanket. So the first thing you're going to do is just chain 1 and then turn your work, and then you're going to crochet down the side of the blanket. So you can see that when you crochet down the side of the blanket, the stitch is not 1 to 1. You're going to have to evenly space your single crochet stitches down the side. So you're going to take, you made a chain 1, which counts as your first stitch. Then you're going to go into the next stitch and make a single crochet, and then a single crochet into the next stitch, and that will bring you to your first double crochet on its side. So you're going to go into that space below the double crochet, and you're going to make 2 single crochet in that space. And then that'll bring you to the next double crochet on its side. You're going to go right into that space below the double crochet and make 2 single crochet into that space. And the same thing with the next double crochet. In that space below the double crochet, you're just going to make 2 single crochet. Then that'll bring you back to the next 3 single crochet rows. So you're going to go into the next stitch and make 1 single crochet, go into the next stitch and make 1 single crochet. Oh, I lost my stitch there. And then go into the next stitch and make 1 single crochet. And you're just going to repeat that pattern all the way down the side. So now you're to your 3 double crochet spaces. So again, in that double crochet space, you're going to make 2 single crochet, and then that brings you to your next double crochet space. I'm going to make 2 single crochet into that space, and then your next double crochet space. Then that'll bring you to your 3 rows of the single crochet rows. So you go into the next stitch and make 1 single crochet, next stitch 1 single crochet, and next stitch 1 single crochet. So go ahead, finish this all the way down to the bottom, and then come back. So now I just reached the bottom of the blanket and just finished the side. So go ahead and turn your work, and then you can see that I have these spaces here. So this is the chain 2 space, and then you can see where the flower, the upside down flower is. You know that you have the chain 3 spaces there, and then you have your chain 2 spaces. So you're going to make whatever your space is, whether it's a chain 2 or a chain 3 space, that's how many single crochets that you're going to make in the space below it. So I know that here I have a chain 2 space, actually, yeah, chain 2 space. Oh, we're on the end, so this was a chain 1. So we have 1 single crochet in the first space. So on the end, I'm going to chain 1 to start, and then that brings me to my chain 1 space. I'm going to go in that chain 1 space and make 1 single crochet. And then that brings me to my upside down flower, and I know that I have chain 3 spaces before and after the flower. So I'm going to make 3 single crochet into the chain 3 space. And then I'm going to go to the next chain 3 space and make 3 single crochet. Oh, I snagged my yarn. I'm going to make 3 single crochet into that space. And then that brings me to my chain 2 spaces. So I'm going to make 2 single crochet into each of those chain 2 spaces. So that's how you're going to crochet across the bottom of the blanket and then come back. So now I just reached the end and I'm going to go up the opposite side. So here I made a single crochet into the chain 1 space on the end. I'm going to make a single crochet into that last stitch on the end, and then I'm going to turn my work to go up the opposite side. So on the opposite side you're going to crochet the exact same way that you did for the other side. You're going to go into that first double crochet space, and I'm going to go behind the loose yarn end as I crochet. So I'm going to go into that space, go behind my loose yarn end, bring up a loop, complete my first single crochet. I'm going to make another single crochet into the same space, and then I'm going to go to the next double crochet space, and I'm going to drop my loose yarn end at that point. I'll bury that later. And then I'm just going to make 2 single crochet into that space, and then I go to the next double crochet space and make my 2 single crochet. And then that brings me to my 3 single crochet rows. I'm going to go into the next stitch and make a single crochet, and the next stitch for my next single crochet, and then the next stitch for my 3rd single crochet. Then it brings you to your 3 double crochet spaces. So just like you did on the opposite side, 2 single crochet into each of the double crochet spaces. So go ahead, finish crocheting your single crochets up the opposite side, and then come back. So then when you finish the opposite side, that will bring you to the top of the blanket. And the top of the blanket is easy because it's 1 to 1, so 1 stitch to every single crochet. So to start, you're going to chain 1, and that counts as your first single crochet for the top row. Then you're just going to go into the next stitch over, bring up a loop, and complete your single crochet. And then you're just going to make 1 single crochet into every stitch across the top. So just 1 single crochet in every stitch across the top of the blanket. So now I finished my single crochet stitches across the top of the blanket, and now we're going to make our border. So you're going to turn your blanket, and we're going to start with the corner stitch. So with the corner stitch, you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to make a double crochet into the same stitch. So you just yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, and then complete your double crochet. Then you're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then make 2 more double crochet into the same stitch. So just yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring up a loop, complete your double crochet, and then make 1 more double crochet into the same stitch. So that first chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and then we have another double crochet, a chain 2, and then 2 more double crochet. And this is what our corner is going to look like for each of your 4 corners. Then you're just going to make 1 double crochet into each stitch down the side. So 1 double crochet into each stitch, and when you get to the bottom, come back. So this is what it looks like all along the side. Looks really good. The double crochet is 1 for every stitch, and then it brings me to the corner. So again, in the corner stitch, you're going to make 2 double crochet into the same stitch. Then you're going to make a chain of 2. Then you're going to make 2 more double crochet in the same stitch. So there's my second corner. Then you're just going to turn your work to work along the bottom, and you're going to continue making 1 double crochet in every stitch. So you're going to continue this 1 double crochet in every stitch around, except for the 1 corner stitch. So again, 1 for each corner would make 4 corner stitches of 2 double crochet, chain 2 and 2 double crochet, and then 1 double crochet into every other stitch. So this was the first time with this style of yarn that I came across one of these. So if you ever come across one of these little knots or snags in your yarn, it's best to cut them out, because there's too much of a risk that it can come undone and then ruin your hard work. So go ahead and just remove it, and then what I do is I just tie a knot, and I make sure that I leave long loose yarn ends, because I like to bury my loose yarn ends in my work. That way it's less likely for it to come undone. So I don't really like when that happens, but every once in a while it happens, even with the good yarns. So then you just resume crocheting. So when you get up to your knot, you just let go of the loose yarn ends and then just continue crocheting as if the knot weren't even there. And then you can bury the loose yarn end later. So then when you finish your last double crochet and you're back to where you started, you can make a slip stitch into the top stitch of that first chain 3 that you made. Just yarn over and pull the yarn through both loops on your crochet hook. Then you can go ahead and finish off. Just yarn over. You can finish off if you're finished, but if you need an additional border, I'll show you how to do that. But if you're finished, you just yarn over and then just pull enough yarn through for sewing. But again, I'm not going to pull through yet. So for mine, I'm going to make 1 more border. So I'm going to slip stitch into the next stitch over. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space of the corner. And then I'm going to chain 3. And then double crochet into the same chain 2 space. Then chain 2. And then make 2 double crochet into the same chain 2 space. So again, you're going to be making the corner the same way, 2 double crochet. So that first chain 3 counts as my first double crochet. So 2 double crochet, a chain 2, and 2 double crochet in each of your corners in that chain 2 space. And then for every other stitch, you're going to make 1 double crochet. And then you're going to repeat that pattern all the way around back to the beginning and then come back. So this is what my work looks like after finishing 2 rounds of the double crochet in each stitch, and I finished my last double crochet for the round. So I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into the next stitch. So you just go into the next stitch, yarn over, and then just bring the yarn through both loops on the hook for a slip stitch. Then you can go ahead and finish off, just yarn over and then just pull enough yarn through to bury into your work. Now you do have enough yarn if you wanted to keep this, finish attaching your blanket, receiving blanket, to your flower design, but I love this yarn so much that I want to salvage it as much as possible to use with other projects. And since I have plenty of the white colored yarn for the border, I'm going to go ahead and make my border with the sparkly white colored yarn. So it's an option. You do have enough yarn to create the single crochet border to attach to the receiving blanket, but that's probably about it. You're not going to have enough for another flower border. It's probably not going to make it. So that's an option. You can save this amount of yarn and then switch over to your white if you want to. So now for your receiving blanket, if you have any loose yarn ends where you had to add more yarn, you're going to go ahead and bury those loose yarn ends now. So I just take my darning needle or tapestry needle, and I'm going to take those loose yarn ends and I'm just going to weave the loose yarn end through the stitches on the back. So not on the embroidery stitch side, on the right side, but on the back of the blanket. And just kind of weave it through. And then after you weave it through a couple of the stitches, you can go ahead and tie a knot. And then I'm going to go ahead and go through 3 times. And then you can take and trim the loose yarn end. So if the knot comes undone, you still have extra length so your blanket won't be ruined. So I usually go about 1 millimeter or 2 from the knot and then just trim it. So go ahead and bury all of the loose yarn ends. After you finish burying all the loose yarn ends around your receiving blanket, go ahead and set that aside. And then you're going to want to bury any loose yarn ends on your blanket as well. So I bury my loose yarn ends on the wrong side, which is the side without the flowers. And then just take your darning needle or tapestry needle, and then just take your loose yarn ends, and then you're just going to weave the loose yarn ends through the crochet work. And then I like to go back across in the opposite direction just to make sure it's really buried well, less likely for it to come undone. And then you can just take and trim your loose yarn end. So go ahead, bury any loose yarn ends that are on your flower blanket. So now you're going to want to place your flower design on the back of the receiving blanket. So here's the right side of the receiving blanket and my embroidery stitch. And then if you turn it to the wrong side, I've attached my crochet flower blanket. And you're going to want to take each corner and you're going to want to use your stitch marker, or you can use some of your white yarn. Just use your tapestry needle to loop a little bit of the white yarn to kind of hold it in place. Leave long loose yarn ends for burying the loose yarn ends in your work. But if you have a stitch marker, go ahead and use your stitch marker to kind of hold the corner into the corner of the receiving blanket. And you're going to put a stitch marker into each of the corners. And then that will just help hold your blanket so it won't become crooked as you're crocheting the flower design to the receiving blanket. So for mine, after I've finished putting everything, all the stitch markers on each corner, I'm going to go the additional step and straighten out one of the sides. So I have one of the sides laid straight, and then I'm going to find the center and put a stitch marker there. So if you like these stitch markers that I use, I got mine from Pastiche Accessories on Etsy, and she has just beautiful designs. This is the stitch marker case, the matching one that she made for me because I just love the little Yorkie dog. And I put all my stitch markers in there. And so you just take your stitch marker you find the center, and you only need one because when you're finished with one side, just take your stitch marker and move it to the next side that you're working with. So I'm using a total of 5 stitch markers. So I'm just going to go on the embroidery stitch and then just take and hook a stitch on the blanket. And then that will help me as I crochet to keep the blanket straight so that I have enough blanket to the end and it won't be crooked. Now I can take and remove, I'm going to start in this top left corner. So I'm going to go ahead and remove my stitch marker from the corner. Just be careful that you don't snag the blanket as you remove it. Just carefully remove it. There we go. And then you're just going to take your crochet hook, go right into that chain 2 corner stitch. So remember in the corner we had 2 double crochet, a chain 2 and 2 double crochet. So I'm going into the chain 2 space. And then I'm going to go into the corner embroidery stitch. And then I'm going to bring up a loop with my white yarn, the same yarn that I used to make the embroidery stitch with. And then I'm going to chain 1. And then I'm just going to take and tie a knot. And then I'm going to chain 1 again. And then I'm going to go into the same chain 2 space and go back through the same embroidery stitch to make another single crochet. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch over on the blanket, so that first double crochet stitch, and then I'm going to go through the embroidery stitch that is right on the opposite side of the double crochet stitch, and it's on the right side of the blanket. So I'm not going into the stitch on the wrong side, I'm going into the embroidery stitch on the right side. I'm going to bring up a loop and then make a single crochet. And then I'm just going to make 1 single crochet in every stitch across. So I'm going to go into the next double crochet, and then you may be going into the same embroidery stitch for another single crochet because the embroidery stitches are larger than the double crochet stitch. So it looks like I'm averaging about 2 single crochet stitches into 1 embroidery stitch and only 1 single crochet into the double crochet stitch. And then you're just going to repeat this all the way around back to where you started. So every time you get to a corner stitch, you're going to be making your single crochet into the chain 2 space, and you're going to be making 2 single crochet into the chain 2 space around the corner. So go ahead and finish making 1 single crochet in every stitch around on the blanket, and again the embroidery stitch you may be making 2 single crochet into the same stitch. So I'm just going to show you, this is what my work is looking like, and it's attaching my blanket, and it's looking really pretty. So here it looks like I didn't grab my embroidery stitch, so I'm going to go back to that and just grab it right where the stitch was. So you're going to want to double check and make sure that you're grabbing both stitches of the embroidery stitch. So for the first stitch, it looks like I'm grabbing just the one end of the embroidery stitch. And then when I go into the next stitch with the same embroidery stitch, that's when I'm going to make sure that I grab both stitches of the embroidery stitch. So I'm just going to finish a few more with you, that way we can look and see what it would look like. So again, I'm only making one single crochet into the double crochet stitch. And then when I go for the second single crochet into the embroidery stitch, you can see that you need to grab both loops. Otherwise it'll still work, but the design won't be as pretty. So as you can see, the design looks much better for connecting the receiving blanket to the design. So go ahead, finish making your single crochets across, and then come back. So I finished making my single crochet border, and it turned out really beautiful. I just wanted to show a close-up. For some of the stitches, the embroidery stitches, I placed 3 single crochet into one embroidery stitch, just so that my design portion of the blanket would line up with the backing, the blanket backing, and it came out really pretty. The majority of them have 2 single crochet per embroidery stitch, but I did make a lot of them with 3 single crochet. So I just wanted to let you know if you're trying to line up your borders. And it turned out really nice. So now I'm going to show you how to make the flower border. So now I finished my last single crochet and I'm back to where I started, and I just want to show you a close-up. You can see the beautiful stitch that was created by attaching the receiving blanket. And then this is what it looks like on the other side. Turned out really pretty. So then when you finish your last stitch, you're going to want to make a slip stitch into the next stitch over. So that first single crochet that you made, you're going to make a slip stitch. So you just yarn over, turn the hook upside down, and then just bring the yarn through both loops on the hook. Then you're just going to start the same way that you made the rows for the flower. You're going to start the same way for the border. So now we're going to start with the corner, and we want a flower to be in the corner. So you're going to start with a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that means you'll start with that first chain 3 would be your double crochet, and then your chain 3 between the flower and your next double crochet. So you're going to skip 3 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 4th stitch. So then you can see this would be your flower double crochet, and then you have your chain 3 space and your next double crochet. So now before you continue on, you want to determine where your flowers are going to fall on the corners. So I'm going to use my stitch markers to show where I want to have the flowers fall for each of the corners. So this is the starting corner, and I put a stitch marker before and after for the corner to show where I would like my flowers to lie. And you can move the stitch markers when you get to the 3rd corner. So I already have one placed at my next corner. So here I put one in the corner, and then I count back 3 stitches because those are the 3 stitches that you're going to skip, and then this will be your other flower. So I'm putting a flower before, on the corner, and then after. So I'll move the stitch marker over when I get to this corner. So this is the 2nd corner, and we're going to be working down the side. So you're going to want to make sure that, now if you don't have any stitch markers, you can use just a loose yarn end instead. And if you like these stitch markers, I got these from Pastiche Accessory. They're really cute. So here you can see that before the flower you're going to have a chain 3 and then a chain 3 afterwards. And so you can space your chain 2s and your chain 3 all the way down, but when you get to the corners you're going to want to make sure that your flowers fall one before the corner, one on the corner, and then one after the corner. That way all of your corners look the same. And you can space your chain 2 and chain 3s so that the flowers will fall between the chain 3 spaces. So again, I made a chain 6 to start, so that counts as my first double crochet, the chain 3 space, and then I have my double crochet. So the flower is going to fall on the corner. So this is the chain 3 space after the flower. So now I'm going to make a chain of 3 again, only because I want another flower after. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then make a double crochet into the same stitch as the stitch marker. That way I'll have a flower on the corner and then a flower where the stitch marker is. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, because you always have a chain 3 before and after your flower. I'm going to skip 3 stitches and then just make a double crochet into the 4th stitch. So now I can chain 2, 1, 2, skip 2 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 3rd stitch, and then I'm going to chain 2 again, and then I'm going to skip 2 stitches and then make a double crochet. Now I'm going to make my chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip 3 stitches and make a double crochet into the 4th. This is where my flower is going to be. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, skip 3 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 4th. And then I'm going to chain 2, skip 2 and then make a double crochet into the 3rd. Then I'm going to chain 2 again, skip 2 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 3rd, and then that will bring me to my flower again. So I'm going to chain 3, skip 3 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 4th stitch for the flower, chain 3 and then skip 3 and then make my double crochet, and then I'm back to the chain 2s. So go ahead, repeat this until you get to your next yarn marker. And again, I'm working down the side, so I'm going to turn my work and you can see that the flower is facing up. So this is the top of the blanket, and then I started in the top left corner and I'm working down the side to my next corner. So again, I made a chain 6 to start, so that counts as my first double crochet, the chain 3 space, and then I have my double crochet. So the flower is going to fall on the corner. So this is the chain 3 space after the flower. So now I'm going to make a chain of 3 again, only because I want another flower after. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then make a double crochet into the same stitch as the stitch marker. That way I'll have a flower on the corner and then a flower where the stitch marker is. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, because you always have a chain 3 before and after your flower. I'm going to skip 3 stitches and then just make a double crochet into the 4th stitch. So now I can chain 2, 1, 2, skip 2 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 3rd stitch, and then I'm going to chain 2 again, and then I'm going to skip 2 stitches and then make a double crochet. Now I'm going to make my chain 3. 1, 2, 3, skip 3 stitches and make a double crochet into the 4th. This is where my flower is going to be. Then I'm going to chain 3 again, skip 3 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 4th. And then I'm going to chain 2, skip 2 and then make a double crochet into the 3rd. Then I'm going to chain 2 again, skip 2 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 3rd, and then that will bring me to my flower again. So I'm going to chain 3, skip 3 stitches and then make a double crochet into the 4th stitch for the flower, chain 3 and then skip 3 and then make my double crochet, and then I'm back to the chain 2s. So go ahead, repeat this until you get to your next yarn marker. And again, I'm working down the side, so I'm going to turn my work and you can see that the flower is facing up. So this is the top of the blanket, and then I started in the top left corner and I'm working down the side to my next corner. So I finished alternating the chain 2 spaces, 2 chain 2 spaces, and then 2 chain 3 spaces where I'll have the flower. And I kept alternating all the way until I get to my corner. So now you can see that I had 2 chain 2 spaces, and then I made a chain 3 space, a flower, chain 3 space. Now I have 3 spaces left before my stitch marker. So I know I want a flower where the stitch marker is, so I'm going to chain 3 again. And then I have 3 stitches before my stitch marker. So I'm going to go ahead and make a double crochet into that stitch. Now, if you have a different stitch count here, you can alternate your chain 2s, chain 3s so that it falls, so that your flower will fall on that stitch marker. Or if you only had 2 stitches there, you can still make a chain 3 and then just skip 2 stitches to make the flower where you want it. That will work as well. So now I'm going to chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to skip 3 stitches, and then I'm going to make a double crochet into my next stitch marker, which is right on the corner. So I'm going to have another flower right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and chain 3 again. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to skip 3. And then make a double crochet into the 4th. Now I want a flower to fall before on the corner and then after. So this is going to be a flower as well, and then I'm going to chain 3 again. And then I'm going to skip 3 stitches and then make my double crochet. And then I can chain 2 and then start my chain 2s, skipping 2 and then double crochet. So I need 2 of the chain 2s. And then skip 2 and then double crochet. So when you reach the next corner, you're going to want to move your stitch markers to the next corner so that your flower will be before the corner, on the corner, and after the corner. And that's how you make your chain 2s and chain 3 border around your blanket. So I just wanted to show how you can see that I'm ready for my next corner. So now I'm back to where I started. And here I ended, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to back up a little bit. So I made a chain 3 and then I had my double crochet, chain 3, double crochet, then chain 2, double crochet, chain 2, and then double crochet, and then I saw that my yarn marker's coming up. I had 2 stitches before the yarn marker, but I want a flower here, so I went ahead and made a chain 3 and then double crocheted into the stitch marker. So now I'm back to that first chain 3 that I made for the double crochet on the corner. So I'm going to skip 3 stitches and I'm going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain. So remember, we started with a chain of 6 because we needed the double crochet and the chain 3. So you're going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain. So just count 1, 2, and then 3. And then just make your slip stitch to join the round. So you can see the pretty petals that I've made, and you could even leave this as your border too. It looks like a little heart. Leave little hearts on all around. And that brings me to my corner. So here you could see I had the stitch marker before, the stitch marker on the corner, and then I removed the stitch marker, but I had one right here. So instead of putting a flower in the first stitch marker, I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then just make a double crochet in that stitch that has the double crochet from the previous row. I'm just going to make a double crochet because I'm going to make the flower into the corner. So that way I'll have a flower and then a double crochet and then another flower on the corner. But if you want to make a flower in the first stitch marker, that's fine too. It'll just depend on what look that you want for your blanket. So I'm making the petal in the corner, which was the middle stitch marker. And I'm just going to show you what it looks like. And then after the corner, I'm going to make a double crochet into that double crochet from the previous round. And then that'll bring me to my stitch marker that I removed after the corner. I'm going to make a petal in that stitch as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make this petal and then just show you what it looks like. And this is how I'm going to make each of my corners. So here you can see the corner. So I have the flower here, and then I have 2 double crochets and then the flower on the corner, and then a double crochet and then the flower after the corner. And that's how I'm going to make each of my corners. So now I'm back to where I started, and the corner stitch where I made half of the petal, I'm going to go ahead and finish the other half of the petal now. This is how my work looks so far. So I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to go into that same stitch where I started. I'm going to bring up a loop to the height of a double crochet, then yarn over and go through 2. Then yarn over, go into the same stitch, bring up the height to a double crochet, yarn over and go through 2, and then yarn over and go through 3. And then chain 3, and then make a single crochet into the same stitch to complete the heart or the petal or the butterfly stitch. And so since this is the last stitch that I'm going to make, I'm going to go ahead and undo the single crochet. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch instead of single crochet. So I'm just going to yarn over and then bring the yarn through both loops on my hook. And then this is where you can start your flower. I'm going to go ahead and finish off mine. I love the little hearts It goes with the title of the flower of my heart. So I'm going to go ahead and leave mine, but I'm going to go ahead and start you off. You're going to make your flower the exact same way that you made the flower in the blanket itself. So since the treble crochet is down the center of the petal, you're going to start with a chain of 4. Then you're going to chain 3 because you have a chain 3 between the double crochet of the flower. So you're actually starting with the chain of 7, and then you double crochet into that first or the next double crochet from the previous row. So you can see how you have your treble crochet for the stem of the flower, and then your chain 3 space, and then your double crochet. And then you would chain 3 again. So I'm just getting you started. And then you would treble crochet, so you would yarn over twice and then go down the center of the petal. And then complete your double crochet for your flowers, your treble crochet for the flowers, and then chain 3, and then double crochet into the double crochet space from the previous row. So you just continue, and that's how you would complete your flowers all the way around. So for mine, again, I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch. So I made my slip stitch, and then I'm going to bring enough yarn through to bury into my work. So here are the 2 blanket styles. I love how they both turned out. It's going to show a close-up. So here is just the petal border, and it looks like hearts all around the border. And then you have the beautiful flower design. Here's the other design with the different style of yarn, and then the completed flower around the border. And here is the other side of the blanket. So for this blanket, I put a little stitch right in the center, but for my other blanket, I decided to just leave it the way it was. So that's an option that you can do as well with your particular blanket that you're making. On my blog, you'll find these free PDF downloads for blanket sizes, so you can size and make whatever size blanket that you want.